Hi, it's Steve Bannon. We're live from the Himalayan Embassy in New York City, where we do much of the broadcasting into China every day. So there's so much happening in China, and I really want to thank Miles Guo and the team here at Guo Media and at G News that are help us set up this remote broadcast today. We have a lot to talk about. There's a tremendous amount of news coming out of China today on the in Wuhan, particularly as the pandemic even gets worse. Now we've got different numbers from all over the world. You've got different organizations that are trying to give their assessments of where all this is going as far as this pandemic goes. It shows the terrible conditions in Wuhan, and it shows what's happening with the Chinese citizens. I want to just show you today on the Financial Times of London leads with about Apple's factories not being able to open up. Citizens that went home into the interior from southern China, Shenzhen, and other areas where the factories are not allowed now to come back. There's many blockades. They've got to do many tests. People don't want this virus to spread. And so, Miles, before we get to and talk about some of the activity in Wuhan and some of the videos, I want you to can you give your assessment to the American people? That's because mainly on our live stream, although we go throughout the world, it's a big American audience, and in Chicago at our stations. Where do you think this
is Curtis Ellis, putting America first. The coronavirus shows the dangers of doing.
Steve, today we connected before, asking me about the Wuhan coronavirus is the situation. Very important now. I see in the West media about coronavirus. This in Wuhan. Nearly all the members and the data all this fake.
You're saying that all the information put up by the CCP on the number of sick and the number of dead is all fake?
Yes.
So right now they have said about 70,000, 75,000. We got Jack Maxey here. I think there's 2,500 dead, Jack. And that number, as Dr. Hatfield has been laughing about all week, it stays exactly at 2.1%. It never changes, right? It's like Chinese GDP, right? It's always 8%, right, or whatever the number is. Are you saying that the CCP is purposely putting out fake numbers, or just the way they calculate it is not accurate?
100% right, sir. Now it's the CCP put out about this the data and the members is the listen to central government. There's a political data and the member, not the truth. You see how entirely China, I think now is more than 4 million, 5 million effect. Minority rate, I think now is 250,000 people die. Go to send a crematory. It's a cremation. This is real truth, I think so.
So, right now, we know we have in Hubei province, there's essentially 80 million to 100 million people under quarantine, right? That's what they're saying.
Yes.
And there's another 400 or 500 million throughout the country in lockdown, right? In some sort of lockdown, not quarantine, where the city's not quarantined, but the city is basically locked down, so people can't come back and forth.
Not that it is, sir. All the Hubei province is the 60 million people is get quarantine. It's all the Wuhan city is 11 million people get quarantine. All the entire China, 80% the area is get quarantine, is lockdown. So now it's 1 billion more people get quarantine, is lockdown. So these are true numbers. But also, it's the infected people, they say 70,000 is totally fake. This is not true numbers. I think now more than 4 million people is get the effect.
How do you, when you say there could be 3 or 4 million people actually infected, how do you derive that? People in China telling you?
Transmission rate.
Okay.
This
transmission rate.
Transmission rate. It's impossible. It's just 70,000. It just talk to Wuhan. Very simple, sir. Why they believe the members don't want the WHO And from America, some people can go to Wuhan, say something. Also cannot go to Chongqing.
Okay, let
Shanghai.
me talk about that for a second. The United States, President Trump, and Dr. Hatfield, jump in here.
Yep.
We have offered to send the CDC, right? The World Health Organization has offered to send the World Health Organization. Dr. Gabriel Leung in Hong Kong University has volunteered to go and help the virus hunting. We know that the CCP has not allowed that until the last couple of days. They've allowed a preliminary team from the WHO to go to Beijing. But they're only allowed to review the data that the CCP is giving them, correct? They will not let anybody go into Wuhan. Why is that?
They want to cover the truth. They don't want the people to see the truth. They worry somebody whistleblower told them the truth. This is the fundamental reason. This is why I see very bad West side, America, all the people trust all the is from CCP government put out the data. This is totally wrong. This is big trouble. Even America, all the Europe, West side, rest of the world trust this the data. America and the world get a big trouble again.
You know, I just left a meeting with, I can't name who I met with, but I met with one of the most prominent people in Hong Kong, and a very good person, known throughout the world as a very good person. And he told me in Hong Kong, it's 10 to 20 times bigger. The infections are 10 to 20 times bigger than Carrie Lam and the Hong Kong government are putting out. That the virus is much spread there. The shops are all closed. There's no food on the shelves or anything like that. So it's much, much worse than it's being portrayed. Now, we want to get to these videos in a second, but I want to go back to the numbers and the scale of this, because and Dr. Hatfield, I'd like to ask you, what doesn't make sense to me, just in common sense, is we essentially right now have 1/10, and Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, 1/10 of the world's population. The world's population is about 7.5 billion people. We have right now essentially 50% of China, or 10% of the world's population, is under some form of quarantine. It's either fully quarantined, like in Wuhan, in parts of Hubei, or in what we call lockdown, which is quasi-quarantine. And we now know from the major corporations, like reported today, as I told you in the Financial Times, the factories are not open because there's not enough workers that are coming through and able to get back through from the provinces because there's all these checkpoints. So, Dr. Hatfield, why is it that the World Health Organization, which is supposed to be a part of the United Nations and represent the world to take care of the entire world, right, to oversee these pandemics, why are they sitting in hotels in Beijing? And to Miles's point, why is the CDC, why is Dr. Gabriel Leung in Hong Kong, why are the top virus hunters, why is Dr. Stephen Hatfield, why are the top virus hunters in the world not allowed to go to Wuhan?
They don't want them there. The WHO is pretty powerless. We saw the same thing in 2014 with the Ebola outbreak. And they tried to monitor the thing from several hundred miles away in the capital city. You have to have boots on the ground. You have to have your own people there to verify what is happening before you can start to formulate where the greatest need is and just specifically what assistance you can most effectively provide as fast as possible. You have to have boots on the ground. You can't do this remote control.
Let me ask you, and we're going to get to there are two women now essentially in charge, senior members, cadres of the Chinese Communist Party and the PLA are now in charge of Wuhan. We're going to get to them. Miles happens to know these individuals quite well. But doctor, let me ask you, you've got the CCP's numbers over here, which is the 70,000 infected, 2,000 dead. You've got other people that are saying there could be hundreds of thousands, 400,000 or 500,000, doubling every 6 days, with, tens of thousands dead. And then you have Miles and other people that we're hearing from China that said there could be millions of people already infected. and hundreds of thousands of people dead, and some of those died by other reasons, and they're just not being counted into the virus, but they died because of the virus. Here's the question for you. Given the scale of this quarantine, do you get a sense that the quarantine is actually working in Wuhan, that we're actually stopping? Because you told us at the very first episode that we had that you have two ways to stop this. You either have a vaccine, which is not going to come for a year or more, or you have social separation. Now, the Chinese, it looks like they've tried everything they can possibly when they finally got on top of it for social separation, right? And I'm not discussing how far they tried to lie to people or didn't get on top of it before it spread. But given the fact now of this massive quarantine, do you think their social separation scheme is working?
No. This should have come to a fairly screeching halt, especially now the people are aware and they're very, very frightened. So you don't have to force self-distancing measures. The fear of infection is doing it. We're missing something here.
You're saying if the quarantine had worked or was showing to work, already you would start to have a pretty significant drop in the infection numbers?
Yes, it should have been fairly dramatic after 7 to 14 days. We haven't seen that.
So even in the CCP numbers, if you took those as ground truth, you would say, in your professional opinion, that in central China the quarantine's not working.
No, it should be getting to peak, and it doesn't look like it's anywhere near ready to peak.
I think what we're going to do, Miles, is get to the videos in the second half of the show. But what I want to do, I want to talk about specifically, because this is getting to be a big controversy in the United States now. I want to talk about the two individuals that really control Wuhan now. They're both women. One is a Vice Premier Sun Chunlai, and she's very close to President Xi, I take it? She was sent down, I think, 10 days ago, right, to enforce an even more thorough quarantine. She came down and gave a speech the first day that said, hey, we're going to go door to door. And we go door to door, we're going to take your temperature, right? And if we deem that you're infected, if we deem you have a temperature, you're coming with us, and you're going to a quarantine center, right? And patriots go to quarantine centers, but traitors give us a hard time. And we've seen many of the videos coming out of Wuhan where there actually looks like nailing people, or if they don't come, they get nailed. They either get dragged away or they get nailed into their house. Can you tell us first about her, about Vice Premier Sun? Why was she sent down there? Is she got more power than the people were there? Many people she fired everybody when she got down there. Is she the person that can actually make this quarantine work?
I know her more than 25 years ago. She's the wonderful politician lady. Also, hers is the very is the CCP style. It's a liar. you listen to her talk this, never happen. Never happen. We send the police, arrest the people, never door by door open, ask you, help you. They close your door. They lock your door. They arrest you. Even you say something defense, we use the guns, put in your mouth. You can see the video. Many people drop the building, suicide. They don't say anything. She's a liar, politician. This is why you see all the CCP talk about Wuhan, coronavirus, everything is fake, and listen to politics people talk. This is a disaster. Don't trust the guy.
So you're saying sending her down there just shows more CCP control, more lies, more brutal repression of the sick that are trying to get the message out of how sick they are?
Yes.
And we'll get to, in the second part of the show, we're going to show some videos actually of people that took them and have gotten them through the firewall, and we're able to see these.
Yes, sir. Video is good evidence. It's the effect. We don't listen to us. Don't listen to us, go about the verify. See the videos, much better.
You're listening to, you're watching also on live stream, and we're also up on Guo Media today, War Room Pandemic. My co-host today is Miles Guo. He's the renowned some would say infamous whistleblower from China, number one whistleblower against the CCP, and has been a big thorn in their side from day one. I want to talk about the other individual. I believe, Jack, that Maria Bartiromo actually had a segment on her show tomorrow on Fox, but there was an analysis done that got sent to hedge fund people yesterday. And this controversy about the Wuhan lab, right? And potentially, was it a weapons lab or is there a weapons program? Was this virus man-made or did it somehow leak out? And the PLA, the CCP, she sent a major general, Wen Chen. She's a major general. She's from the Army Institute of Research, medical research, and she is considered in the West by the intelligence services as being the head of the bioweapons program in China. Now, do you know her? Can you tell us about what you know about her?
I know her is the 2003. Her is the family also the Army, orders the Army. Her is very close to the Central Army. The government is this high-class people. She studied in Europe, also before very often come to America. So she is number one almost in China biological weapons lab.
She studied in Europe. She studied in the United States. She's been stationed in the United States before.
Yes. So she
is the number one engineer or biological weapons expert in all of China.
Yeah, this is why 2003. She solved the China, the SARS.
She helped solve the
SARS. Very close to China Vice President Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping.
She's close to Wang Qishan.
Very close.
So when you send her down, we've only got 2 minutes, and Dr. Happel will take a break here in a second, go to commercial, but if you send a major general that's in charge of the entire biological weapons program down to Wuhan to help Vice Premier Sun in the situation, as someone that was a senior executive and entrepreneur in China and know the CCP, what does that signal to you?
It's the general don't listen to Sun Chunlan. Just listen to Wang Qishan and Xi Jinping. This is a totally different path. China is the organization political. This army don't listen political guy. Sun Chunlan is just listen Xi Jinping. The general just listen Xi Jinping and Wang Qishan. So this is very strange. Why this the Sergeant General go there, join this case? This is very complicated.
When we come back from break, I want to have Dr. Hatfield. Stephen, what I want to do is start. You've actually looked at some of the reports that came out today, some additional analysis where they say it's not highly, but they say it's improbable, I believe, that this came from a weapons lab. Right. And I want to walk through briefly the science when we come back in this episode of War and Pandemic. I'm here in New York. We're at the Himalayan Embassy, which is the broadcast center of Guo Media and G News. My co-host today is Miles Guo. And I want to thank everybody for making this happen. We're going to be doing more remotes from this because we want to get more voices in here in this horrific situation. One of the reasons that today we're focusing on central China and Wuhan, why Miles is here, is that the central part of this problem is in China. Right now, we have 1/10 of the world's population, almost 700 million people in China, are under some form of quarantine, whether it's a lockdown, whether it's quarantine, a hard quarantine, where they're going door to door, however you want to say it.
At Angie's List, we've made